We're just going to talk for a second about setting up the FaderPort for use with MixCraft. You can see as it is at present, tracks along the top of the FaderPort mirror what's happening in my MixCraft session, so everything is set up correctly. And just so you know what to do in MixCraft itself to do that, in File menu and Preferences, and then under Control Surfaces, we have to make these particular settings. So we have one control surface set up for Mackie Control and another one set up for Mackie Control XT. Okay. Now the reason there are two is because the FaderPort 16 is technically split into two devices, and then they are linked together to make a big device of 16 faders. So the settings in here, we've got Mackie Control once again. Mackie Control is this one, and underneath that we've made a new device called Mackie Control XT, and then we've chosen the input for the first one as PreSonus FaderPort 16, then the output for the first one, PreSonus FaderPort 16 or FP16. Then we've ticked the link checkbox. Then for the Mackie Control XT, we have input as MIDI into PreSonus FP16, and output is MIDI out to PreSonus FP16. And you can ignore this MIDI out 3 option, that's got no use to us here. So linking that one as well with the checkbox, click OK, everything's cool. Every time you go into that window and out of it again, the faders on the FaderPort will reset themselves, so you'll just see them jump up and down if you go in there to change anything. And just to be clear as well, the PreSonus FaderPort needs to be in MCU mode using the settings for Ableton Live, because there is no specific setting for MixCraft, but the settings from Ableton get most of the functionality that the majority of people should need. So if I just turn the FaderPort off, we can do this while MixCraft is running, and I'll show you how to get to that and how you can reset it if someone has changed yours in a mixed use environment to be using a different piece of software like Studio One or something like that. So let's just turn it off, and MixCraft will give us a message in a moment saying something has changed regarding the MIDI hardware. There we go. And I'll hold down, when you want to change the mode that the FaderPort is operating in, hold down the first two select buttons. So select button 1, select button 2, and then turn it on again with the switch at the top right, just behind the unit where the power supply comes in. Turn that on while holding those two select buttons down, and we now get these different options on the displays. Sometimes it's easy to get a bit confused when people talk about Mackie HUI and things like that, and people try and select this option, the HUI. That's not what we want for the case of MixCraft. What we want is the MCU option here, and we'll select that and then choose the option for Ableton. Okay, so if I go back just so you can see what those options were again, if you were using Studio One, of course, you'd select this one. If you're using Pro Tools, you'd use this one here, the HUI setup. But for all the other options, and there is of course a blank MIDI mode that lets you MIDI learn everything, but that's a pretty hard way to set things up. But the option that we want to go with is MCU and then MCU Ableton if we're using MixCraft, or Ableton for that matter of course as well. And then we just choose select here, which is going to restart the FaderPort for us. We don't have to turn it off and on again, and wait for that to do its thing. I'll click OK over here in MixCraft, and what this will do, MixCraft will detect it now, and what should happen when I click over OK over here in MixCraft once again, you should see the faders jump up and down, or at least hear them, and we'll see this the OLED screens change back to the track listing that we've got over here in MixCraft once again. And if that doesn't happen automatically, just pop back into your File menu and Preferences once again, and you don't really need to do anything. You just need to have a look at the control surfaces, confirm your settings are OK, then click OK. There we go, and that forces MixCraft to recheck the hardware that's connected, and you can see that once again our OLED screens are reading out the information consistent with what's in our MixCraft session. So everything's looking good.